Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the sixth edition of Tuesday Tuition, a Division EF and H initiative. I'm Pooja, and I serve on the District 98 newsletter team as the editor of Communicate 98. Friends, in today's session, I will be showing you the art of crafting the most important PR weapon for any organization, or for that matter, a Toastmasters club: the newsletter. I'll be sharing an elementary and an intermediate level view on three aspects of putting together a newsletter. Number one, by defining the content strategy. Number two, creating a reusable template. And number three, learning to have fun while you're doing the most with your content. Let me begin by showing this little piece of comic which tries to capture an important element of newsletters through this cover page. So like we can see, there are a few statements made here like make decisions, have fun, meet important people, build your confidence, talk about important issues. As a club, newsletters give you that chance of making some noise. And as a club member, news is able to reach you. You no longer have to seek for information that matters to you at your club at different places. Newsletters are the best ways for you to strengthen the likelihood of people engaging with the message you want them to consider. But in crafting these messages, what's more important is for you to learn the strategic goals of your club and your role in it as an editor or as a club president. Think about what your readers value and how they behave. Where, when, and how the content is presented throughout your print matters. Let me also admit that a fairly narrow set of people are likely to take interest in the content you present. So that presents you with a bigger responsibility of making your print magnetic, attracting, and lifting the audiences. When I began my tenure as the editor, I realized that newsletters were the best way for us to capture experiences from around 4,000 members across District 98, spread in around 13 cities of the country. The only way we could do that was by knowing what's their story. I designed my campaign around that phrase, what's your story? Content must be story-driven, useful, findable, current, engaging, flexible, and shareable. But the biggest word here is story. We think in stories. We react in stories, whether it is data or any other kind of content. So before you begin crafting the newsletter for your club, analyze the background of your club and ask your members, what's your story? So that brings us to our first step, which is of planning our content. This was the plan that I first created and shared with the trio in understanding the goals of our newsletter. So in this particular content strategy plan, I try to address few questions which I sought clarity for. Like, what are the goals of a district newsletter? What does the success look like for this newsletter? And mainly, who are my readers? Content strategy is a fairly lesser known concept. It became more common, if I am to say and take you back in history, in late 1990s. It is referred to as the planning, development, and management of content in written or digital media. While content is still managed and developed, the content strategy focuses on how clubs or organizations could use stories and smart data to communicate strategic information that matters to them. There are several organizations where people or readers are faced with very little time to go through entire content cover to cover. In such scenarios, we can reach those people with content that matters to them by making sure that we address the where, when, and how they use the content in those situations. And newsletters give you that capacity to engage with the content that is critical to your club's success. So, like we can see here in this content strategy plan, there were 8 goals that we thought were important for a district newsletter. And I'm pretty sure that these are the same goals that matter even at the club level. One is to be informative. Second is to influence and improve the perception of a district or a club and Toastmasters brand as a whole. And third is to demonstrate those values. The fourth and most important is to raise awareness about an imminent or current effort or an issue that requires action in your club or community. Fifth is to increase the membership and Toastmasters interaction. And the last bit is to invite sponsorship, increase event registrations, and overall create a buzz in social media. So when we identified these 8 goals, we made sure that we had specific categories in the newsletter that targeted these objectives. I will be showing you a mapping of which are the sections that we have identified in the newsletter in exactly making sure that these objectives were being met month after month in every issue. So now that we know what are the traits of a good newsletter or what are the objectives that our readers are looking out for, how can we be sure that what we are doing is the right one? What does success look like for this newsletter? So there are 2 main important points here. First is people should love the look and feel of your newsletter. And second is people should love the content. The reason why looks are as important as the content for your print is because we are all biased towards aesthetic forms. When readers visit a page or a newsletter, they make quick decisions on whether to stay on that page or to keep flipping through the pages till they seek a better looking content. Much of that decision hinges on the aesthetic appeal of the design. Cramped, unorganized content can have a much harder time keeping a reader engaged than a well laid out content. That is why, as editors and designers, we can harness the principle of attractiveness bias to build relationship with readers quickly. If you keep the rule of thumb that form follows function, which we will be examining soon in the upcoming slides, you may be better placed to strike a balance between aesthetic and reader experience. So once we have planned what the design of our newsletter should be and what are the various elements that our newsletter needs to focus on, we also need some kind of validation. And our metric for validating our work was through Facebook, through the Facebook likes and through the feedback mechanism that we generated through quarterly surveys. So, who are my readers? Any Toastmaster across the globe with focused attention to District 98 Toastmasters, or anyone who wants to learn about Toastmasters. Another very important audience who we often try to overlook or ignore are our potential sponsors and media channels. Your newsletter might be designed for a club or maybe even an area or a division. But it is always good to make sure that you have specific placeholders in your newsletter to grab the attention of these potential sponsors. So once we've identified answers to all these questions, we can go about setting the mood for your newsletter. And how do we do that? By compiling a theme. So we compiled an annual calendar of themes for Communicate 98. But we even fragmented that decision by looking at only the first quarter or the second quarter and so on for each of our editions. So we began by having single worded themes, unlike having seasons or festivities as the primary idea of driving the mood for our newsletters. So we had celebrate, we had evolve, unity, and few other verbs which could highlight the entire theme for our newsletter. Content intent. So what should my newsletter be based on? Every newsletter needs to take a reactive and a proactive approach of putting together information. You can optimize your information by including details from your hindsight, from your own insights, as well as your foresight. So like you can see in this graph, we have two coordinates to decide how we can narrate a story. We begin by understanding what happened, why it will happen, or how can we make it happen. And all these four questions are very critical in determining how we direct the storyline of a particular article. Now, often we do not have this luxury of creating content ourselves as editors. More often than not, we are editing the content that we have received. But what you should also understand here is the fact that you can drive the kind of content you want to include in your newsletter. So how you do that is by identifying potential authors for your newsletter. I'll be sharing few more specificities on how we can achieve that in the upcoming slides. So in this slide, we see the content categories that we have identified for every objective that we listed in our content strategy plan. So for having a newsletter that is informative, we made sure we had at least one article which served as a knowledge sharing piece. And that was done through interviews with eminent leaders from the district in what we called the goal post. Second was we wanted to influence and improve the perceptions of our district as well as Toastmasters as an organization. And for that, we made sure that we had at least one article from an international leader who shared his or her own experience as a leader, a mentor, or in advancing our journey as Toastmasters. The third most important objective we thought was the aspect of highlighting the IRSE core values. And in each of our issues, we have had at least one article which brought out that aspect in a more pronounced manner. Tracked was one of the most successful categories in the newsletter, where we looked to track the life and the Toastmasters journey of Toastmasters who had outdone their roles as members and as leaders. And the fourth and the last most important thing that we make sure we include in every issue of the newsletter is to have updates from across the district, which we put together in a category called the district feed. So these are the four main categories around which we build our monthly issues. But we also have some other fun categories like romancing the city, which is basically the way in which we can portray the story of Toastmasters who have gone outside of their clubs or cities or even maybe country to attempt a Toastmaster meeting maybe, or just as a normal touring visit. And another new category that we had was that of having book reviews and movie reviews, everything clubbed together in what we call as the top of the month. So this was just to spice up the print, but we learned that readers enjoyed the reviews that we shared in those sections, because we had sections that were very localized to all the members in the district. So whenever we chose a restaurant review, we made sure it was from one of the cities where our district is based, like maybe Pune or Mumbai or Hyderabad or even maybe Gujarat. So these are the few things that even you can try in your club by looking out for little information which form like snippets of information in adding variety to your print. And with that, we come to the next aspect of content generation. So we have two set of people here who can generate content for you. First is the fixed contributors, and second is the flexible contributors. When we refer to fixed contributors, these are the people on whom we can bank on for at least one article for our newsletter. Now, what I mean by that is we identify potential authors who have some background knowledge on a topic that we think they know, and we share this skeletal framework with them. So what do we share? First is our theme for that month. Second is the word count that they should restrict their article to. Third thing is to make sure that they put it together in a good format, maybe like in a Word document. And fourth, most important thing is to give them some context on what they could write. We have been doing this for the past 6 months, and it has been very successfully working for us. These particular fixed contributors are approached well in advance with what our expectation is of their article. So we have been doing this in the form of interviews, which makes it all the more easy for an author to contribute his ideas, because we have questions that are built around how we want them to answer our questions. Second thing is to have experience stories. So let's say if you had a Toastmaster who recently completed his or her DTM journey. So you know that this person is qualified to speak or answer questions on this particular topic. So you approach them with the subject and give them few outlines on what they could narrate their article on. So these members become your data points for specific categories of articles that you are looking to include in your newsletter. The other category of contributors are the flexible contributors, whom we invite on a public basis. So as we open our call for submissions, we announce our theme, our word count, and a deliverable format, similar to what we do in a fixed contributor style. But a lot of things are open here and left to the discretion of the author. So we give them some vague categories, if I could put it that way, in helping them understand what are the ideas on which they could contribute. So we had something like club stories. If a club had a joint meeting or a milestone meeting, they come forward with their contribution. Or even if a club has had a unique theme of meeting, we have been welcoming those kind of stories as well. So you could define what are the kind of categories that you want to include in your print. So now that we know how to solicit entries and organize content, let us look at the second main aspect of creating a newsletter, which is template design. Now, there are various ways of designing a newsletter using free tools that are available on the web. But the tool that I highly recommend and encourage is Microsoft Publisher, which is readily available in our machines. So here you can see few screenshots from the publication where it gives you the ability to apply a template, a predefined template, to choose a color scheme, to set the number of pages for your newsletter, as well as select the font schemes for your newsletter. So the images you see on the right hand side are a preview from what we selected from the display, as well as few images that we included from our Google search. So without any further ado, let's get started on template design. So let us begin by launching a Microsoft Publisher application. So I'm using the 2007 version of Publisher. So here, like you can see, there are popular types of templates that we can incorporate for our design. I usually go by selecting the blank page size. And let's select an A4 portrait, which is here. Okay. This also gives you the option to select a color scheme for your design. The one we use is Ivy. So let me go by selecting on a more neutral tone. Let's say maybe Iris. And let's do a create. Boom. So that gives us our first page of the newsletter. Like you can see, this is very much similar to PowerPoint, where every page appears like a deck. So we see our first page here. Now, once you have identified the number of pages for your newsletter, which is a very confusing question that even I was troubled with early on, but defining a page size limits and sets the context for your print. So what I would recommend is that you set a predefined limit on the basis of the readership attention span that you think your club members might have, or maybe on limiting your own efforts in producing newsletter work. If your newsletter is a monthly issue, then I would think a page count of 20 is decent, similar to what we do at the district. But the choice is totally yours. So now that we have our first page, let us go about creating more pages. We do that by going to Insert, Page, and here you can select the number of pages. So let's say I want 19 more new pages after the current page. Insert blank pages. Okay. So here we see 20 pages have been added to your deck. Now the next step for us is to set placeholders for text and image. We do that again by going to Insert, Text Box, and here you can simply drag the text box to show the placeholder for your text. Now let me see if I have some lorem ipsum text. Yes, I do. So like you can see, this lorem ipsum text occupies the entire page, which is not what you want. You might have few images. So let's create a placeholder for an image. Let's do an insert, picture, empty picture frame. And here you see, as soon as the picture frame is added, the text automatically wraps around it, which I think is the most beautiful feature of Publisher. In fact, there are options on which you can let the text cross across the image or have it go in the foreground or the background. The choice is all yours, but I love the default style in which MS Publisher does this for us. So here, like you can see, let's say you have an article, you want to include the author picture, you can do that here, and you can go about adding the text. Now the text, like you can see, is a single column text. So we can make it a 2-column text by formatting the text box and going to text box tab. Under the text box tab, go to columns and select 2 columns. So that gives you the margin specifications for your 2 columns. Click on OK. And here you have your 2 columns for your page. You can do this for the remaining 19 pages of a newsletter by maybe swapping the image placeholder to the right and the left. Also, another important hack over here is to reuse content. So there are a few elements which happen to get repeated throughout the template. It could be a logo, it could be a text, it could be an icon. So let us see how we can do that. For that, do a Control M on your keyboard, which takes you to the master view of your template. Now, this is the place where you can include elements which will be repeated across the template. So let's say I want to include the Toastmasters International logo. I can do that by selecting the logo and pasting it here, resizing the logo as per my design. I can do an F9 to zoom. And let me go and place it here. Yes, that fits tight. So if I do a F9 again, it zooms out. Do a Control M, which shuts your master view preview. So I'm doing a Control M, and boom, like you see, the Toastmaster logo appears on all the pages. So this way you can go about tweaking few things in your template and arrive at something as complicated as this. So here you can see there are several elements that we have included, right from these few tiny icons here and there, as well as the text box. So this was a strip text where you could include maybe social media information. And these are again few icons added for aesthetic design. Now here, like you can see, the master file in this template, let me take a Control M. It includes this design as well as the Toastmasters logo. Now this brings me to the inappropriate use of the background in the logo. For that, I strongly encourage everyone to read the Toastmasters branding manual to know the specifications with regard to the size of including a Toastmasters logo, to make sure that the logo is not distorted or presented against such similar kind of colored backgrounds. So the branding manual recommends few colors from its color palette, which are mostly the shades of maroon and blue. So we have been trying to follow the color conventions to a large extent, and clubs could do the same. But there are a few places where you could exploit the creativity of design in the main content section of your article. So make sure you have a right mix of what is recommended and what you can take a liberty on. I go back to the main view. So here we have around 13 pages. This was the cover page. This was a rough draft that we had shared. And here we have the TOC, which again is made up of each and every tiny fragment bit. So it is all about making one element and multiplying it into the number of elements that we need to have in our design. Now, if you're looking out for these logos, these small, tiny icons, Google Images is the best place for you to go. So you can look out for keywords which say high definition or vector icons or transparent icons, and look for such tiny elements that could brighten up your print. There are several clubs that use Microsoft Word as their template for the newsletters. Although Word is a great tool, it is an editing tool. But Microsoft Publisher gives you additional flexibility of being able to reuse several elements of your template in various pages across various issues. And for these reasons, I think Microsoft Publisher makes for a more powerful tool in comparison with Microsoft Word. Also in MS Publisher, you have the ability to, not only do you have the ability to publish in various formats like PDF or maybe even plain HTML, it gives you a choice to rearrange several elements within a page and across several pages. You get to choose a color theme, you get to play around with the fonts, you get to easily include image files. Importing and exporting media is extremely easy and intuitive. And I think overall it gives you a certain level of control on how you need to organize your content as well. So because it's free, there is no reason why you shouldn't consider using Microsoft Publisher as your publishing tool for newsletter. So in the previous slides, we looked at how to plan our content and how to organize information in a template. Let us next look at design. So design is more about how the human eye processes elements on a screen. As simple as that. Content in any digital page layout follows a specific hierarchy. Now, like you can see on the screen, we have on the left-hand side an image which shows fragmented bits of content which are arranged in paragraphs with a line space. And on the other side, we see a template which has an image file along with few short bursts of paragraphs, along with headers followed by another short burst of paragraphs, and so on. Similar to what we try to do in our template. Now, hierarchy is a nice way of saying not organized from most to least important. We also use hierarchy to show relationships, wherever relationships exist between content blocks. Readers define the visual hierarchy on the page to learn the story. The story, or rather the items that first grab the user's attention, are at the very top of the hierarchy. Each item that next draws attention is subordinate to the one before it. Now, there are few parameters on which this hierarchy is based. One is the size. The larger the element, the more attention it will attract compared to the smaller elements. Think of it like a newspaper headline. The newspaper uses that large font header text to signal what the rest of the text in smaller font will deliver. Let's take a hypothetical breaking story. Your eye should go straight to the headline. You might notice how it dominates, spurring you to find out what it's about. The second parameter that defines hierarchy is color. Bright colors are more likely to draw attention than drab shades. We've all probably used highlighter to mark outstanding points on a photocopied handout. Yellow is a richer color and a brighter color than white, which is also used to signal a mute color. After the bright colors, richer and darker ones will grab the reader's attention. Same goes for lighter tints. The third parameter is contrast. Dramatically contrasting colors will catch the eye more than slightly contrasting colors. Contrast also helps you show what's important in your design. Everything is relative. If you want to make a design that is based, let's say, on a plan, you need to show the various elements which are pronounced in your design. And you can achieve that by using contrasting principles. The next parameter is alignment. Now, alignment can either create order or it can create a sort of chaos between the design elements. For example, placing content and then a column creates a priority for the reader. We expect important information to be in the top corner of the page. We also see this at work mainly in newsletters. Also, quotes are a good way of highlighting quotable information from your article. That's part of, say, an interview where the writer wants to highlight what the subject said. With a large font and the break in the alignment of the other text, it makes the hierarchy draw our eye first. Repetition is another important parameter. Repeating styles can give the reader a sense that content is related. For example, we've presented most of the text in our newsletters in more or less a similar fashion to maintain a sense of brand throughout the various issues that we have. If we broke the style, let's say, by using a text that is different in font or different in the way it is organized in placeholders, it could quickly draw attention from the familiar surroundings. And the last important point is proximity. How closely we place design elements to each other. That tells our readers how likely they are to be related. Also, using white space is a very effective and powerful technique of incorporating effective and minimalistic designs. Texture and style go without a saying. The use of texture and styles can help prioritize your content too. Just like fonts, they can set the tone of your design. But also make sure that the texture you add doesn't end up being distracting, because it was far more textured than a normal reader would expect. A popular college in Copenhagen said that eye-catching designs need psychology. It requires something more than designing. It requires the appreciation to need to engage your users, or rather your readers, more directly. I hope these principles of hierarchy work in tandem with what we've learned in template designing in helping you design effective templates for your clubs. Speaking of design, the other aspect that totally thrills me is the concept of flat design. Now, flat design is a design that avoids the excessive use of gradients, textures, and drop shadows that are designed to deliver 3D effects for even simple elements that focus on flat structures or typography or color schemes. Now, these are the few posters and covers that I had created as part of our flat design idea. Now, the reason why flat design makes it look so appealing in terms of design is not only because of the clutter-free viewing, but also because of two other main aspects of reducing complexity in the way the visual and textual content is presented, as well as it enhances the reader experience. So flat design is something that I highly recommend in designs, but it is totally a personal choice of what you wish to incorporate in your newsletter. I also want to touch upon a phrase called form follows function. It indicates that form or aesthetic design should be derived from the function that it carries out. Your decision of following a flat design or even a more complicated design structure depends on the kind of tone you want to set with your newsletter. But always make sure that your design complements the content that you intend to present. It should in no way obscure the meaning of information that is being put together on a template. The last aspect of newsletters is to publish them And of course, throw a big party. Yeah, throw a party because I am a editor, but otherwise you can merrily indulge in a party. So Issue is one of the most robust platforms for publishing a newsletter. All you have to do is create a login account. It is completely free of charge, and it allows you to upload your document, a PDF document, and in turn it generates an embed code, which you can see here, and which you can use in your website if you have a website for your club, or you could use it for the purpose of sharing on social media. So there is a link option, there is a default option, which is actually an HTML code. So you can use the link option, which will generate a PDF shareable link for you, which points back to the issue platform. The second alternative is to simply upload your PDF on Google Drive and create a shareable Google link. So publishing is easy, and with Microsoft Publisher, it makes the whole process a lot more easier. If you ever face issues with the file size of your PDF, you can use any online tool to compress your file and then upload it back on the website. But in all this process that we've seen today, the most important aspect of ensuring quality in your print is to do proofreads and to edit your copy very crisply. You need to make sure there are no grammatical mistakes of any sort, and absolutely no tolerance for typographical errors. So you can have a team of your own, maybe a team of writers and a team of proofreaders. Now, I know that that is too much of a luxury to ask for, but even if you have, let's say, one proofreader for your copy, you can at least be sure that there are 2 pair of eyes that have gone through the whole draft. So these are the few tips that I think will help you in crafting newsletters in a more easy and simple manner. And there are a few more concepts which you could incorporate as you go on building articles for issues month after month. Often we might not be able to include all the articles that we receive. In such cases, you need to have a proper content folder in place where you know that if you receive, let's say, an article from a member of your club, which is just a pure member experience, you can put it in a member experience folder. If it is coming from, let's say, a leader, you might want to prioritize that article and push it in a folder which says leader articles. So that way you can include the timestamp when you've received those articles, and you can also save them and categorize them as per their categories. When it comes to theme, make sure you visit these folders and compile the articles that align with your theme. So these are the few tips that I had for today. I hope you found this session useful, and I look forward to reading your newsletter copies following this session. Thank you so much.